All right, we are back with another Napoleon in Egypt Battle of Aboukir, 1799. We're going to continue on to see what Napoleon can do here in Egypt. He's got a recap of the last one. Egyptians hate him. He's taken over Cairo, pretty much the upper or lower Nile or whatever, by the sea, by the Mediterranean Sea. He's got the British in the Mediterranean. Their ships are kind of circling around. They found him. The Ottomans are angry at him. It looks like from the map they're sending some forces down there. We'll see how this plays out. I want to see how Napoleon can not only do his thing militarily, obviously, but how he can kind of pacify this area in a way so that he can at least come away with a nominal victory, hopefully. And his career obviously isn't ended in Egypt, as we know, but let's see how he escapes this sort of firestorm he has around him. I'm really excited. I do like all the Napoleon videos so far, but for me, the main thing is learning, but also the political side of it is really intriguing. It's not only just the battles, which are cool, because as we know, he becomes emperor, and there's this whole system in all these countries of, the old way. And he's kind of changing that. And the Ottoman Empire maybe is a practitioner of the old way, I guess. You guys have given me some comments in the last video of how the Ottoman Empire was, doing at this time. I want to shout out to Light. Been amazing. Everybody's been amazing. Light commented. I'm just calling them Light. I don't know what their real name is. But they commented in the last one about the Ottoman Empire kind of being not defeated, but like ailing a little bit. It's not at the height that it was once. And its power is kind of a little weaker. But the leader of the Ottoman Empire, as I saw in the last video, he's kind of stirred up this sort of infidel, fervor in the area. So we'll see how that affects Napoleon.
February 1799. French General Napoleon Bonaparte has conquered Egypt. But his grip on the country is threatened by revolt. And the British have destroyed his fleet, cutting him off from reinforcements. Now the Sultan has vowed to crush the foreign invader.
Yeah.
And two large Ottoman armies are being assembled to reclaim Egypt. But Napoleon will not sit and wait for them quietly. He has decided to strike first. The forces gathering in Syria, rumored to be 50,000 strong, pose the greatest threat. So they will be his first target. On the 10th of February, Napoleon leads a force of just 13,000 men into the Sinai Desert, bound for the Holy Land.
Rough.
It's all the men he can spare, with so many needed to hold down Egypt. Nevertheless, it's a highly motivated, experienced, and well-led force, organized into 4 infantry divisions and a cavalry brigade, commanded by Murat.
Okay.
For Napoleon, speed and surprise are imperative, but things start to go wrong very quickly. The French are again poorly prepared for the harsh conditions and heat of the desert.
I was actually going to ask this question to you last time. During these times, were all the uniforms like wool? Or I'm guessing that, did they have cotton at this time, or like what we have nowadays? I know like sometimes they talk about like people wearing silk and stuff. I just don't know. Is like, I'm guessing it doesn't help that they're all, as we can see from this painting or this drawing, they all seem like they're heavily clothed. And I'm assuming that in really hot, arid, desert, the weight of all this clothing it, makes it exponentially harder to march, and also makes you sweat a lot, which would probably make you more thirsty. And then I don't know if they knew about I don't know if they knew about electrolytes at this time, but you're losing electrolytes, you're losing salt, which makes you even more thirsty. So yeah.
Water is scarce. Food runs short. At El Arish, they unexpectedly find the town garrisoned by 3,000 Ottoman soldiers. The siege holds Napoleon up for 11 days and costs 400 casualties, both of which he can ill afford.
Yeah.
The garrison's surrender is secured only with generous terms. They are disarmed, but allowed to leave after swearing an oath not to take up arms against the French for a year.
Interesting.
The French army continues into Palestine. Its fertile plains and fruit trees a relief after the desert. On the 24th of February, the French occupy Gaza, where they're delighted to find large stores of food and ammunition abandoned by the Ottomans. Napoleon's next objective is the port city of Jaffa, held by 5,000 Ottoman soldiers.
Okay. It seems odd, too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll get into it. It seems odd Jerusalem didn't seem to have a garrison. Was this time in history, was Jerusalem like a unified city? Like we know nowadays it's kind of, not to get into the politics or anything of it, but it's kind of a very divisive city, or it's got a lot of factions and issues going on. So was that the same thing? Was Jerusalem kind of, or was it like the Ottomans just fully had control over it?
His field guns blast away at its stone walls until finally a breach is made. But when Napoleon sends a messenger to invite surrender, to spare both sides the horrors of an assault, the Ottomans cut off his head and display it from the city walls.
Ooh, I don't think Napoleon's gonna like that.
Enraged French soldiers storm the breach and overwhelm the defenders. Then they flood into the city, embarking on a killing spree that lasts 24 hours.
Yeah.
The sights were terrible, wrote one French witness. The sound of shots, the shrieks of women and fathers, piles of bodies, the smell of blood, the shouts of victors quarreling about loot.
Man.
The butchery is indiscriminate. Women and children are slaughtered alongside 2,000 Ottoman soldiers. The next day, order is gradually restored. But more horrors are to come.
What am I supposed to do? Have I any provisions to feed them or boats to transport them to Egypt? What the devil can I do with them all? Napoleon to Louis de Bourine? I'm sorry if I don't know how to pronounce that. To go back to that scene, I do not condone, obviously, I hope nobody does, the killing of innocent civilians, women and children especially, surrendering forces, stuff like that. But I can understand the anger that the French might have felt. Seeing the messenger beheaded, as again, maybe the cultures are different, but I know in like the European theater, there was some sort of like, one could say honor system, I suppose. If people surrender, or if people are sending like diplomats or messengers, you're supposed to not harm them. You're supposed to treat them with respect, even if you're in a battle or like a war. I guess there was maybe such animosity between these two sides that wasn't the case for the Ottomans. I guess I can't really speak to why they would do that. And then I can understand why the French soldiers would be angry. On top of seeing that happen, they're probably very hot. They've had a long march through the desert. They're hungry. They're thirsty, exhausted. They probably don't want to be there. In general, just, it's an inhospitable land full of people who hate you. So part of me can understand why there was such butchery, I guess is the right word. But it is sad. And I understand before, people might comment and say that's war. I get it. I'm not naive enough to think that even in today's world, with all the conventions and, the Geneva Convention and these code of conduct we're supposed to follow, even in nowadays, of you can't harm civilians or what hospitals, we still see wars all over the globe where innocent civilians are hit with missiles or, they're starved, taken into custody, things like that. I understand. I get it. It just sucks to see because I can put myself in the shoes of both sides. I can put myself in the Ottoman shoes, for example. Let's say you're just a merchant. You're not in the, you have no part in the war in terms of like fighting. And these French break into your city. They start killing. Maybe they kill your wife and your child in front of you. And then maybe they kill you. And then if they don't, you're full of hatred. And there's just no end to it. And then I can also be in the the shoes of a French soldier. You sat there, or you're here in Egypt. You're hot. You're, like I said, people hate you. You're maybe fearful that you're going to get killed. And then you send a messenger saying, hey, let's avoid this big battle. How about you just surrender and no bloodshed? And then you look on the wall and there's that guy. And maybe you were friends with him, the messenger, or you knew him. He's your fellow countryman and his head is on a pike. And maybe in your mind, you're like, okay, nah. It's like the time for talk is now done. You had a chance. Now we're just going to destroy you. I can see it from both sides. It's just really unfortunate.
In the aftermath of the sack of Jaffa, Napoleon finds himself with 3,000 Ottoman prisoners who have been promised their lives. But with his troops and supplies already stretched thin, he is reluctant to spare any to guard or feed these unwanted captives. Besides, some are from the garrison of El Arish and have broken their oath not to take up arms against the French. And they beheaded his messenger. After conferring with his officers, Napoleon gives the order to execute the prisoners.
Man.
Over 3 days, the French lead the prisoners in batches to the beach and slaughter them. Some are shot, some are simply driven into the sea, and by the 3rd day, French troops are ordered to use bayonets to save their ammunition. It is an atrocity that Napoleon will defend for the rest of his life. I had no choice, he insists, many years later. But the massacres provide easy propaganda for his enemies.
Yep.
While if the intention was to terrify his enemies, it seems only to have encouraged them to fight harder.
Yeah.
As if by divine judgment, within days, hundreds of French soldiers fall sick with bubonic plague. Napoleon shows considerable bravery, visiting the sick in hospital, an act later celebrated by his own propaganda machine.
Horrible.
Napoleon now heads towards his main objective, Acre. The ancient port city, famed for its role in the Crusades, is now the seat of the local Ottoman governor. He is Ahmed Pasha al-Jazar, known as the Butcher.
Hmm.
For 25 years, he has ruled Syria with an iron fist and is notorious for his imaginative tortures and executions.
Oh boy.
He has ignored Napoleon's invitation to surrender. And what's more, unknown to Napoleon, 2 British ships of the line have arrived to support him.
Really?
Napoleon arrives at Mount Carmel, 12 miles south of Acre, just in time to see the British capture a coastal convoy carrying his vital siege guns.
That sucks for Napoleon, obviously. But a question here. Obviously they didn't have instant communication back in this day, but what were the sort of relationship between the Ottomans and the British? Did they know each other on a sort of diplomatic level? And was there like a treaty there that the British were like, hey, we see the French are in your territory. We also hate them or want to defeat them. We'll supply some naval support for you. Or was it just like a happenstance? The British just show up to the port and then take Napoleon's ship. Is Vinny going to tell me that one? Was there sort of like an agreement there or not?
Their loss is a massive blow to his hopes for a quick siege.
Yeah, I can imagine. The besieged soldiers hurled a rain of stones, grenades, flaming blocks of tarred wood, and boiling oil. The grenadiers fled, leaving behind a great number of their comrades. Quartermaster Charles Francois, 9th Demi Brigade. Yeah. This is a tough situation, man. This is, not that Italy was easy, but this seems like a whole nother level of you need a certain level of thinking to get yourself in this situation and then get it out of it. So I'm excited to see what Napoleon can do.
On the 18th of March, the French arrive outside Acre's walls and start to dig in. Without their siege guns, the city's defenses are a major challenge. Acre bristles with 250 guns, is surrounded on 3 sides by the sea, and on the other by walls that are 8 feet thick.
Holy.
The British control the sea, ensuring easy resupply, and have landed Marines, naval gun crews, and now Napoleon's own siege guns to...
So the way they're explaining this, it seems like the British and the Ottomans, at least on, some level, were fine with each other. Maybe they weren't like friends or like complete allies, right? But they're allowing British soldiers into the city. To me, I don't know if that's a big deal to you guys, but that seems like a big deal. Because these are also Europeans. And these are also, maybe not fully, but nominally, Christian people. And likely seen as infidels as well as the French. Maybe even more so because, the French Revolution kind of got rid of sort of that, religious tinge to the government that a monarchy would have. So this is interesting to me, how this just seemingly, okay, yeah, come into our city, obviously supply us or whatever, and we're bros and the French are our enemies.
To bolster the defenses. The British commander, Commodore Sir Sidney Smith, is energetic and full of ideas. While a French émigré, Antoine de Philippot, a former classmate of Napoleon's, provides expert siege advice.
Interesting.
10 days after their arrival, the French bombardment begins. Napoleon's field guns smash a small breach in the walls, but are then overwhelmed by counter-fire. 40 gunners are killed, and all but 3 guns disabled.
Holy.
Napoleon sends in his infantry with scaling ladders. A hidden moat breaks up their assault, while defenders blast them with muskets and hurl down rocks. The French hurriedly fall back in disorder. Any man left behind is likely to be decapitated. The butcher has offered a reward for every French head he has brought.
Wow.
The French then repel an Ottoman sortie, inflicting heavy losses. The siege of Acre enters a stalemate. Napoleon will wait for heavier guns to arrive from Alexandria before he risks another assault. But then, alarming news arrives to disrupt this plan.
Uh-oh.
The Ottoman army gathering to the north, 40,000 strong, is on the move.
That's a lot.
Napoleon can spare just 4,000 men to face them. The odds seem insane, but Napoleon trusts in the training and experience of his troops, and particularly the quality of his officers. Unsure of the enemy's line of advance, he divides his force. On the 8th of April, at Nazareth, Junot locates and scatters an enemy cavalry force 10 times his number. 3 days later, Kleber defeats 5,000 at Cana, while Murat surprises another force north of Lake Galilee. On the 15th, General Kleber receives word that the main enemy force has swung round to the south and is camped near Mount Hamoure, 8 miles from Mount Tabor. Seeking glory, Kleber advances with just his own division, intending to surprise the enemy at dawn. But he misjudges the march. When the sun rises, he's exposed on open ground, his 1,500 men facing 35,000.
Oh my gosh.
Kleber's division forms square, and under a scorching sun holds the enemy at bay for 10 hours.
What a guy, dude.
But they are running low on ammunition and desperate for reinforcements. Napoleon, meanwhile, is racing towards them with 2,500 men. He arrives just in time, attacking the Ottoman army from behind, taking them completely by surprise. Most of their forces are a peasant militia, and seized by panic, they flee in all directions.
Yeah.
Kleber joins the attack. The Ottoman army disintegrates. At a cost of fewer than 300 casualties, Napoleon has destroyed the enemy relief force and secured control of Palestine.
Wow. And, you know, first off, I want to give props to that other guy. I forgot his name already. Kleber or whatever. Crazy guts, man. And the fact that I think we have to pause too and give, Napoleon's great, obviously, but his generals and, captains and commanders and stuff, they're pretty smart too. I mean, maybe some of them make some weird decisions here and there, but it's not like they're perfect in the fact that they always win or, they make the best judgments, but they're freaking pretty good too, man. Like the narrator was saying, you want to have people under you, as great as you are, maybe as the whole commander, you want to have people under you that can not only take your commands and your orders and make them happen, but that they can think as well for themselves. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, but how do I do it? And what's the best way to do it? And if all else fails, like that guy was surrounded, you just fight. You keep fighting with courage and endurance, waiting for, Napoleon to show up or maybe another guy to show up, and, you win the day.
The fall of Acre must now surely follow.
Can you doubt that in sending you to such a remote country, the Directory had any aim other than to exile you from France and to make every one of you perish? British propaganda leaflet to French troops. Interesting. So the British were trying to sow some doubt and mistrust in the French army at Acre. I wonder how much that propaganda actually worked. Not just in this instance, but at all. Because part of me feels like if you're motivated by your leader, Napoleon, let's say in this example, and by the ideas of the revolution that so many have fought and died for, would you be so easily swayed? I suppose some people would, maybe. I mean, I can't get in the minds of everybody, but it's an interesting tactic to take to kind of see if you can get a few big, even just a few of them to sort of abandon their posts, surrender, turn to your side, maybe even. Cool.
But at Acre, the situation is deteriorating for the French. Without control of the sea, they can do nothing to prevent supplies and reinforcements entering the city. While their own ammunition stocks are so low, men are sent to find spent cannonballs to fire back at the city. Most alarmingly, plague breaks out in the French camp.
Again.
With around 20 new cases every day.
Yeah.
Then, suddenly, a chance to end the siege. On the 24th of April, the French explode a mine under one of Acre's towers, causing serious damage. Napoleon orders an immediate assault. Hundreds of grenadiers charge forward. But once more, they come under torrential fire and have to fall back. The clock is ticking for Napoleon. Surely it won't be long before the Ottoman army assembled at Rhodes makes its move. And he fears having to recross the Sinai Desert in high summer, when the heat will be lethal. Finally, on the 7th of May, Napoleon's replacement siege artillery arrives. Not wasting a moment, the French heavy guns open fire next morning. Large sections of the city's crumbling walls are brought down. French troops attack at multiple points. Some fight their way into the city. But counterattacks by British Marines and Turkish troops throw them back. General Lannes is wounded in the neck and has to be dragged to safety, narrowly escaping the Pasha's head choppers. On the 10th of May, Napoleon calls on Kleber's grenadiers to make a final attempt on the city.
There's one in the city already.
Nothing could be more beautiful than Kleber on the day of battle, remarks Napoleon, as the general leads his division forward with unflinching courage.
Wow. What a guy.
General Bon advances with his troops in support. He is mortally wounded in the fighting.
Dang. Rest in peace.
For all the French heroism and courage on display, the firepower, ferocity, and skill of their enemy proves insurmountable. Napoleon, observing the attack from a forward battery, is knocked off his feet by a near miss.
Holy.
Finally, he accepts his men have done all that can be asked. The attempt to take Acre has failed.
Dang. I missed my destiny at Acre. Napoleon to his brother Lucien. Yeah, I mean, I can't really fault I should reword that. They don't have a lot. So they're doing a lot with what they have. They just don't have enough. They can't get supplied by sea. They can't be supplied by land, really. They have very few troops that they can spare. They're running out of provisions, running out of shot. I mean, what do you do, you know? And give props, obviously, give a lot of props to the Ottomans and the British fighting. They held their ground under several assaults and all their walls crumbling down and, you know, all that stuff. I mean, obviously, they were able to get resupplied and stuff from sea, which helps a lot. And I don't know if they had to deal with it, but they didn't say they had to deal with the plague. Was there cases of the plague for them? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, you can't win them all. And at least he's alive, because he almost got blown up, apparently.
Acre is Napoleon's first major military defeat. The 4-month campaign will cost him 4,500 casualties, more than a third of his army's fighting strength. Nevertheless, Napoleon has succeeded in his main objective, neutralizing the threat from Syria. On the 20th of May, his army begins the 300-mile march back to Egypt. En route at Jaffa, Napoleon orders that around 50 of his men, riddled with plague and unable to march, be put out of their suffering with an overdose of laudanum. They are mercy killings. The victims would have suffered worse at the hands of the enemy.
Yeah.
But the decision is still controversial.
Yeah.
The French retreat continues into the desert. The heat is overpowering, and water in short supply. Morale is at rock bottom. Finally, after 25 days of marching, the army reaches Cairo on the 14th of June.
Okay.
Their return is marked by triumphal parades and celebrations across the city, organized by Napoleon. He is determined that his campaign be seen as a stunning success in Cairo and in France. The men have just a few weeks to rest. On the 15th of July, news arrives that the long-awaited Ottoman invasion has begun at Aboukir.
Okay. So here, the namesake of the episode.
There is no time to lose. Napoleon must hit the enemy immediately before he can break out into the Nile Delta. With most of the Cairo garrison, Murat's cavalry, and Kleber's division, 10,000 men in all,
Kleber.
he races towards Aboukir.
My guy.
The experienced Ottoman commander, Said Mustafa Pasha, has 9,000 men entrenched in 2 defensive lines guarding the fortress of Aboukir. His plan is to force the French to attack his strong defenses. Napoleon is thrilled to learn this. The enemy has nowhere to run.
Yeah, true.
At dawn on the 25th of July, he orders an all-out attack. The first Ottoman defensive line had not been completed and is overrun in minutes.
Wow.
French cavalry sweep around to cut off the Ottoman right flank. Hemmed in against the sea, the defenders panic and flee into the water, hoping to reach the ships offshore. Thousands drown.
I'm surprised there wasn't reinforcement from British ships.
With D'Estaing's division advancing on the left, Lannes in the center, and Murat's cavalry on the right, the French now advance against the second Ottoman line.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys didn't hear that, but it doesn't seem like there's much support here in this battle like there was in Acre from the British. I don't know if that, maybe they didn't think this was important, I guess. I don't know. But it does, like, it from, I don't know the geography of this, but it seemed a lot more flat. Now, if you had like British ships, you know, off the coast along these areas, kind of, you know, shelling inward, would that have helped? Or maybe the ship's, it's too shallow here, I guess. I don't know. It is surprising, though, to not see really any British help launching this invasion. And I thought the invasion force would be a little bit bigger. I mean, 9,000 men's a lot, but they had 40,000 at the other battle, Mount Tabor, and they were annihilated. And they only have 9,000 here.
Anchored by several redoubts, it resists the first assault. But when the French fall back, over-eager Turkish soldiers leave their entrenchments to pursue them. Murat seizes the moment and charges forward with his cavalry.
Yeah.
The second line is overrun. Murat pushes on to the Ottoman camp. And despite a gunshot wound to the face, captures Mustafa Pasha at the point of his sword.
Oh, he got shot in the face.
By 1 p.m., the Turkish army has ceased to exist.
What the heck?
Just 5,000 survivors remain, holed up in the fortress. They surrender 8 days later, on the 2nd of August. 1 year to the day after the destruction of Napoleon's fleet.
Really? The name of Aboukir was fatal to all Frenchmen. The 25th of July has rendered it glorious. Proclamation to the army. I mean, I'm hesitant to even call that a battle. I mean, the way the narrator was talking, it was over pretty dang quickly. And I'm doubting that the Ottomans did like the same tactics. Obviously, like, you know, the French would form square when they saw cavalry. I don't know if the Ottomans thought of that or like they had like something similar. Didn't seem like it because Murat just charged them all down. And then you know how crazy it is to be shot in the face and then still go on and capture the enemy like commander or leader. That's crazy.
The Battle of Aboukir is a great victory for Napoleon and does much to repair his reputation after defeat at Acre.
Wow.
But news now reaches him of developments in Europe. And for France, the news is not good. A new second coalition has been formed against France, led by Britain, Russia, and Austria. Their armies have won a series of battles against the French, reversing almost all Napoleon's gains in Italy, and now threaten the Republic with invasion. It is no time for France's best general to be far from home, unable to influence events. La Patrie is in danger. Napoleon's next move is not in doubt. On the evening of the 23rd of August, Napoleon quietly boards a frigate near Alexandria, with a small entourage, including Berthier, Marmont, Lannes, and Murat, and sails for France. To his army, he leaves only a short proclamation. The news from Europe had determined me to proceed to France. I leave the command of the army to General Kleber. The army shall hear from me forthwith. At present, I can say no more.
Wow.
It costs me much pain to quit troops to whom I am so strongly attached.
Dang. That's pretty emotional, actually.
General Kleber is not amused by his sudden promotion. He's deserted us with his breeches full of merde, he declares. When we get back to Europe, we'll rub his face in it. But Kleber will never return to Europe. The following summer, he is stabbed to death in Cairo by a young Muslim radical.
Dang.
The remnants of the French army in Egypt surrender to the British in 1801, following defeat at the Battle of Alexandria. They are later repatriated by the British Navy under the terms of a peace treaty.
I saw the way to achieve all my dreams. I would found a religion. I saw myself marching into Asia, mounted on an elephant, a turban on my head, and in my hand a new Quran that I would have composed to suit my needs. That, I honestly can't even, there's no words for that quote. What an incredibly deeply interesting quote that is of what Napoleon was thinking at the time. And I really feel sad for the troops that were in Egypt. And Kleber, who I kind of liked him, at least from the little bit we saw.
Napoleon's expedition to Egypt was a costly failure for France. Its aims, which had always been vague and opportunistic, became impossible following the destruction of the French fleet at Aboukir. And though it has lived long in popular imagination, for every dashing act of heroism or romantic legend, there was a moment of immense brutality and terrible suffering. The expedition did have one positive legacy. Shortly before he left for France, Napoleon was invited to inspect a stone slab that his troops had pulled from the rubble while building a fort near the town of Rosetta. Dating to the 2nd century
the Rosetta
BC,
Stone.
the slab was inscribed with a royal decree. Uniquely, the same text appeared in Demotic, Ancient Greek, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. The French had to hand it over to the British under the terms of their surrender, which is why the Rosetta Stone now sits in the British Museum.
What an amazing artifact.
2 decades after its rediscovery, the stone proved the key to unlocking the lost language of Egyptian hieroglyphs and revolutionizing the study of ancient Egypt. This and other discoveries by the French savants spawned an entirely new discipline, Egyptology.
Yeah.
The study of Egypt's distant past that continues to fascinate and amaze us to this day.
Incredible, guys.
Napoleon's voyage across the Mediterranean takes 41 days and involves some close shaves with the Royal Navy. But his destiny was not to be thwarted a second time. En route, he makes his last visit to Corsica and the town of his birth, before setting off for France to take the next step in his astonishing rise to power.
Wow.
Bias and misinformation are as old as history itself. In this video, we've seen how Napoleon's enemies leapt on his actions at Jaffa.
Okay, it's a sponsor spot. What a great little series this was. This one fascinated me a lot because I'm a big fan of ancient Egypt. I think it's a very mystical, time in humanity's short time on Earth. But also it actually made me, so I gained a little bit more insight into Napoleon's thinking and more insight into the world at large during this period, bringing in different cultures, bringing in different religions into something that most people see Napoleon as like a European thing, right? Is very interesting to me, and I appreciate the account here by Epic History TV, not kind of brushing over the more barbaric side of it, right? You know, we saw what happened with the prisoners, the killing of women and children, some of the decisions Napoleon made that are still questioned or thought of as maybe cruel, like the killing of his own troops who had the plague. It was a big boost to my knowledge and now insight into what was happening during these times, and I loved it. Of course, I like, you know, when it's in Europe too. I like the European theater, like the Italy one was great, but this is just like a new aspect where it adds in all these other variables and layers that Europe didn't have, and so I really like that a lot, and I'm excited to see what happens next. I was told that the coup video, I think it's the coup, is next chronologically, so that'll be my next reaction and the one after this. And then, of course, I'm still waiting on the next Nelson video. I really like that one too. Those are cool, the 3D battles. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching along with me, and if you want to share anything in the comments, I would love to see it and hear it. Any more things you want me to react to that's not necessarily Epic History TV, I'm writing a list down, and when I get a little bit more time coming up here, I'm going to start branching out a little bit while also doing Epic History. Thank you to Epic History again. Great production. All the Patreons who helped them. Thank you so much to you guys too. And also thank you to everybody who's been subscribing to me and watching my videos. I didn't expect it, honestly. I'm just here along for the educational ride. And I'm really enjoying myself. I love history. I think it's so important for people to know this stuff. And it's a shame that, at least in the US, or where I'm from in the US, we don't really learn any of this. And that's a real big shame, because this had such a massive, this was such a massive time of exploration and, invention and new arts of war. And I think we owe it to ourselves to kind of, owe it to ourselves and future generations to keep this stuff alive and in our minds. So thank you guys for watching along. Appreciate it. Peace. Have a great one. Bye.